Brian Crowley, ex-jockey, now Stallion Handler. I'm from a village called the Halfway, which is roughly about 40 minutes south of here. 3 older brothers. You know, we grew up in a village where there was plenty of horses and ponies about the place. So from a very young age I was introduced to them. And yeah, sure, I'll start from there, really. The eldest brother, Paul was riding Pint of Pints at the time. Paul had a couple of ponies at home, a couple of horses, etc. But he was a very good Pint of Pint rider himself, and he was a huge influence on me as a kid, you know. I'm not exactly sure how many Pint of Pint winners he rode, but Paul rode a lot of Pint of Pint winners for Jerry Cully, John Joe Harding and Marie Harding, Michael Cullen down your direction. But Paul done a stint in England as well with Mark Wilkinson. I think it was 95, 96 maybe. And he didn't really enjoy it. So he came home and pursued his Pint of Pint career where he done very well. So we're from the rural, you know, a rural village really that, you know, it was horses and cattle, and that's how Paul got involved. And as far as I know, and Mam was a stay-at-home wife, you know, to look after the kids. And Dad had a good job in Eli Lilly in the pharmaceutical company. And it wasn't until I started going pony racing that Dad actually got involved more, you know. Like, he used to take me pony racing there every Sunday, up and down the country. And he'd have me back in Paddy Mullins' the next morning for 9:30, you know. Like, looking back on it now, the miles he done for me was phenomenal, really, you know. He gave me every possible chance going, you know. There was nothing else, and the thing about me was I had so much determination. I would have went through a brick wall for you to be a jockey, you know. I didn't care how I got there once I got there, you know. You know, I made sacrifices as a young fella, like a lot of people would, and, you know, yeah, I was always going to be a jockey. Going back there, actually, when I was talking about growing up and that, yeah, you know, like there was Paul and this other farmer over the road, Eamon Granger. They had a couple of Pint of Pint horses together. Or, sorry, Eamon owned them, Paul was riding them. Paul used to come back after work and go over and ride them out, but there was 3 of them. So Muggins here was the 3rd fella. And like, I was only about 11 or 12 at this stage, and like, I was galloping thoroughbreds now. And the mare that I was riding was a mare called Proud Slipper, who was the most quietest mare you could ever sit on. And like, sure, that was fantastic, like, you know. And I was actually schooling her over pallets. I'd be giving Paul a lead on a younger horse, and sure, I thought I was made already, you know. But it was what I wanted to do, you know. Don't know show jumping. I think I was 7 or 8 when I got my first pony, and you know, there was a lot of kids around going hunting and that's where it really started. And I think I was 10, maybe 10, there was a Pint of Pint in the yard down the road from me. A man by the name of Robert Hawkins, who recently passed away actually. I used to go down to him on the weekends and ride out Pint of Pint horses down there and school him and everything. Like, what I did back then wouldn't be heard of now, you know. And you know, it was a great experience. There was a good bunch of lads down there that looked after me as well, you know. So, owe him a bit. I think I was aged 11 or 12 when I actually found out what the Irish Field Directory was all about. So, as a kid watching racing on television, back then there was no at the races or that, so it was only on weekends where there was big racing. And you know, I found out that Tommy Carmody had his phone number in this thing, and Tony Mullins, and sure, look, I wouldn't have liked to look at the phone bill there at home for a few months, but let's just put it that way. But yeah, you know, I started from there, and then I started writing to trainers and telling them I was 14 or 15. And the postman, I knew him well, Brendan Walsh was his name, and we had a big tree at the end of the driveway. And I said to him, if we get post for me, put it underneath the tree, because I knew I knew there might be one or two lies. And I mean, I wrote Dermot Well looking for a job, Kevin Prendergast looking for a job. And actually, it was Mrs. Mullins, Paddy and Maureen Mullins, that they ended up going to in the summer holidays. I remember overhearing a conversation. Dad was talking to Mrs. Mullins, and he says on the phone, he says, Miss Mullins, you do know he's only 12. He's not 15. Well, anyway, cut a long story short. So I went up there in the summer holidays. I stayed in the office, and it was very good. You know, the staff up there were tremendous to me, really, you know. Fringe Holly was there. Fringe Holly was sold before he ran, if I remember correctly. There was Beagstown, there was Noah Dunce, there was Bruschetta, Not Complaining But. Regarding staff, there was Noel English and his brother John, Tommy Tracy, Harry Nolan. They're all great crack, you know. They looked after me great. I was 12 and I was up there until about I was 14 in the summer holidays. But what I used to do was, fair play to Dad for doing this now, but he used pick me up on a Saturday evening, take me pony racing on the Sunday. And at the time, we used to meet Barry Canary here in Fermoy and Davy Russell, and drop them two boys off at Willie Mullins, and Dad would drop me off at Paddy Mullins. So it was actually, you know, it was great times, great fun. I was very lucky to fall in with the Feelys out in Dunmanway, Mick Feely and that, Eamon and Noel Feely's father, and they had really good ponies at the time. You know, they're like the Willie Mullins of the flapping now, you know. So rode a few dingle winners for them and just progressed from there, really. Done it for about 3 years. 3 years, and I safely say it's the best education any young fella could get, because you've got from the start, you know, the start is crucial in a race. Then you got to get your horse or pony balanced, and it ranges from 5 furlong races to 2 miles. So there is a bit of riding involved in it, you know. And sure, Dingle was the pinnacle, you know. Going to Dingle was like or Epsom. I was 15 then, and just gone into secondary school. And there was a teacher in Bandon Tech called Kieran O'Driscoll, and sadly he's passed since. And he was a mad sports person. He was huge into GA, rugby and horses. So he obviously heard about me doing the pony racing, and he teach me woodwork. And so when I go into his class, there'd be no woodwork done, only on about horses and racing and everything. And he actually owned the Mayor and Aidan O'Brien's called Mondeo Rose in the syndicate, who won a couple of races. And he actually got me into Joe Crowley's at the age of 15. I went up for the Christmas holidays, I want to say. It was fantastic, you know. I sort of broken that mold of being homesick when I was in Paddy Mullins's and whatnot. So at 15, I went up to Joe's, and that was just fantastic, you know. There was horses up there like Promelee, Royal Mount Brown, Eurobande. I think he was Aidan's first Cheltenham Festival winner. He was there. You know, you're just surrounded by these, you know, fantastic horses. Like Aidan had moved to Ballydale, I think, the previous year, and it was Colin Murphy and PJ Colville running his side, and Joe doing his side. So, you know, it was a bit of an experience, sorry, to say the least. When I went up to Joe's at Christmas time, I literally gave up school. But going back to Kieran O'Driscoll again, at that time you couldn't leave school until you're 16. But fair play, he pulled a couple of strings. But it was in the pipeline. Even the teachers knew I was missing school, and you know, I just, they knew it was going to be horses. To be fair, poor Mam didn't have a say in it, because I wouldn't go to school for half the time anyway, you know. And sure, look, your dad knew it from a young age, or when I was young. Sure, just the whole family knew it, you know. That I wanted to pursue my riding career. So I got my license. I just turned 16 in April, and I got my license soon after. And back then in Joe Crowley's, you trot up the horses before they load up, you know. And so we're trotting up the horses, and he says, by the way there, he said, grab your bag there, you're riding her in the last to Killarney. Just like that. I'm thinking, Jesus, Mum and Dad don't know about this, or no one knew about it, because no one had time. And I found out later, he said the reason that he left it as late as possible was in case I got so nervous and whatnot, you know. But anyway, I rode her. I was fourth on her. It wasn't tough going. It was sure, you know, you're young, you know, it's what you want to do, and you know, you're going to Punchestown there on a Tuesday, galloping horses, and you know, everything was mixed up a fair bit, you know. Tipperary schooling. So, you know, from a very young age, I got an awful lot of experience very young, you know. So, the 22nd of May, 97. It was a pint bumper at Tipperary. A mare called Making the Cut for Seamus O'Farrell again, actually. And my brother Paul was riding in the race. He was riding Supreme Gold from Michael Cullen. And he says, what are you doing here? He says, I'm riding in the bumper there. All right. He says, and he actually, two of us were up sides. You can see us for the first mile. The two of us were up sides in front. And I went down and I won it, and he came fourth. So I still give me a bit of stick about it every now and then. So the thing about it was, like, she was 12-1. You know, it wasn't as if it was a 4-6 on favourite. And sure, it was just fantastic. Like, you know, it was just a great feeling. Your first winner under your belt for Aidan O'Brien, and you know, it was just fantastic. That day, actually, I was just weighing out for Making the Cut, and Sandra McCarthy and Peter McCarthy, they came up to me and they said, are you riding in the bumper next Wednesday? I said, no, I'm not, Sandra. She said, well, I have a mare running and I want you to ride it. I'm like, you know, which is fantastic stuff, an outside ride. And obviously I'd be jocked up in Mr. Paddy Munns' name, you know, and that was just phenomenal. And so I went on to Wexford, and there was a 2 bumper card there at the end, 1/2 and 1/2.5. And I actually won the 2 of them. And like, you know, Aidan O'Brien and Paddy Munns won for the 2 of them. And that was, sure, I felt I was made then, you know. But But the good story behind that was on a, I'll never forget it, it was on a Friday night. And so I won the 2 bumpers. And for some reason, I don't know how or why, but I ended up I was off that weekend, and I ended up in Sean O'Brien's 21st in Mitchellstown. I think, I don't know who I was staying with or what, but I ended up there anyway. And I was more of a celebrity than he was inside there, you know. I think I took the limelight off him a little bit, but sorry about that. But anyway, I went down to Tipperary or Tralee the next day, where I was riding a hot pot for Joe Crowley in Haylord. He was 9-10 on favourite or something, and I turned into the straight, and Charmaine O'Neill was on my inside, and the 2 of us, we were going at it. And I'm just getting the upper hand, gonna neck clear. And what do? I sit up. Yeah, I thought the winning line, and it was the 100-yard line. So I got pipped on the line. Charmaine came back and beat me. And I'll never forget it, like how a jockey's life can go from hero to zero. And I'll never forget it, a day or 2 later, Joe Crowley said to me, he says, had you a good night Friday night? I says, sure, it's grand, quite. He says, were you at that party? Sure, I knew then I was caught. I says, I was. He said, right, he says, I'll tell you the next time you can have a weekend off. I think I went, was it 6 to 7 weeks without a weekend off. But to be fair, it was the making, you know, because you actually realise then what you have, and, you know, it knocked the edges off me anyway, to put it that way. Dad was there the same evening, and Dad actually had to put a jacket over me. I was getting that much abuse. I rode in a couple of pints, fell off a load of them. I'll never forget, as a young fella, Adrian Maguire was riding Barton Bank in the King George. This was the year he won it now, not the year he fell at the last. And Maguire would go down to the second last and the last, and he'd just start doing this. And Barton Bank would let fly and he'd wing it. So I thought, sure, that's all you got to do. So my first 4 rides, I don't think I got past the second. From riding like Adrian Maguire on Barton Bank. And just the penny dropped a small bit, and I progressed a little bit and done okay, you know. I had a lot of, I wouldn't say that, I had a good few pint rides, but not too much. More riding bumper horses then, you know. I was riding a lot for Joe, and, you know, the weekends and that, and yeah, for no other reason than that, really. I was 18 when I went to England. So I was doing well. I rode good bumper winners for Joe Crowley, and I was thinking, is like, I was going through the claim quite quickly, and I'm thinking, do I want to be an amateur and stay here and just ride out my claim and not progress? And, you know, I remember watching racing there from Chepstow, places like that on a Saturday, and it just really appealed to me. Like, it just really, that's what I wanted to do. And I made 1 or 2 inquiries, and I was introduced to Tom O'Mahony above at Tipperary. Tom got Adrian Maguire into Toby Balding's, and a lot of other jockeys as well. So I said to Tom, I'm thinking of going to England, could you help me out? He said, yeah, I'll help you out. So at first then, I was going to Martin Todd Hunter's, and then Henry Daly's, and then for some reason it all took a twist, and Venetia came up. Yeah, he says, look, we'll send you to Venetia, trains in Hereford there, and, you know, she's an up and coming trainer. So he says, okay, Venetia was. And the parents weren't too happy about that, you know. I was still quite young going over to England, but I had my mind made up anyway. There was nothing going to stop me. So I actually surprised. I spoke to Venetia a good few times on the phone, and I had a few suspensions now, whip suspensions. And she was very concerned about that, which was fair enough too. And but I talked my way out of that one once or twice. And I remember I was going over the time of the Kerry National here, and I was getting the ferry over. I had 2 suitcases. I had a train in booked from Fishguard to Hereford. When I got up to Hereford, I called the office and I said, "Hello, Brian Crowley speaking here." "Brian," she said, "you're a little bit early." I said, "Yeah." I said, "Look, I had enough time at home there now, so I just decided to come over." She said, "Well, there's no horses in." I said, "Look, I'm here now anyway." So I ended up going power hosing for a month and painting. So, you know, but it was grand. Look, I tell you, I got to see plenty of the place, you know, in a leisurely time and that, you know, and there was no staff there. There was only about 1 or 2 people there that were still employed. The rest had all gone away home and done their thing. And I was staying in a house, Mount Pleasant it was called, a big old stone house. 2 windows were missing, basically broken. And I had to walk to work probably 2 miles. It was across a quiet country lane. Then I had to cross the Gallop and down into Venetia, so I was plenty fit enough anyway when the horses came back in. Shane Kelly just had recently retired, and I was sort of his replacement. Norman Wilson was number 1 there at the time. Norman would come in every Thursday. Venetia loved schooling horses by themselves, be it a maiden or a grade 1 horse. They all schooled by themselves, and Norman was doing all the schooling on them. But like Teton Mill had just suffered his injury. Lady Rebecca was there at the time. Samican was there at the time. Nordance Prince, Effectual, who was a decent horse. What else was there? Fourth in Line was there. You know, you're just surrounded by Saturday horses, you know. So Robert Ogden would buy 3 or 4 French horses that won bumpers by 10 lengths, and they're paying 400 grand for each of them, and you know, just surrounded by them. I had a good chat with Venetia. I was claiming 5 at the time. I think I needed, 28 winners to ride out my £5 claim. And like, she said it to me, she said, "Look, you can get an agent and write out your claim, and that could be it. Or you can stay with me for the first year, and I can use your way, and we can go from there." So it was on a Saturday. It was at Ascot. It was a big enough handicap hurdle. I was riding a horse called Effectual at Ascot now. So I walked the track and was just mesmerised by the whole size of everything, you know. It was huge, and here you are at this grade 1 track, like it's your first ride and as a professional. So anyway, I claimed 5 off 12 stone, and he ran very well, beating the neck. The distance, or it's probably a bit on the short side for me, you know. He ended up being a 3 miler. That was only 2 miles that day. So that was on a Saturday. On the Tuesday, I went to Warwick. I had 4 rides for Venetia. I was riding the four of our runners. And I was riding a good, decent enough bumper horse called It's Only Me. And he won the maiden hurdle that day, and it just snowballed from there, really. You know, it was just, things just took off, really. So Venetia was a great woman. She worried a lot about stats, and you know, she wouldn't run a horse unless she thought it'd be in the first two or three. She was top class at placing horses. Very good on ground. Very good on form of the race. Yeah, she was just very good. She knew what she had. She knew her limits. You know. I was riding in the majority of all the big races. They're all the big handicaps. You know, I rode in the Hennessy and I rode in the rehearsal chase a couple of times. And I suppose Thesis was a very good horse. I won a Ladbroke Hurdle on him. Bicycle Thief, he was another good horse. But I suppose obviously the one that stands out is Jocks Cross. You know, I went over in September '99. And we won the Welsh National December 2000. So basically I was riding the second string, you know, at this time, and I went to Chepstow that day. I had 5 rides. Harvest won, so that eased the old pressure a little bit. He won the maiden hurdle, I think. So onto the Welsh National, and the favourite was Moral Support of Charlie Mann's, and he beat Jocks Cross quite comfortably in the rehearsal over 3 miles. And but I knew that our fella had improved now. He was only a small horse. Jesus, he was barely 16 hands now. He was that small. And like when you stand up in him, your head is nearly out past his ears now. You know, he was a hardy horse. And sure, look, he loved Chepstow for some reason. I just think things happened a little bit slower from around Chepstow. The ground was a little bit softer normally there. And he just got into lovely jumping rhythm. I remember coming down, coming down the hill over, and I just come up alongside of Tony Dobbin. He was riding Moral Support. And we turned in and it just went silent. And all I remember was I just looked across at him and I could see the Channel 4 cameras at the far side. Now, I just turned 19, so this was a big day now. And I'll never forget it, Tony Dobbin in his Northern Ireland accent, he said, "Long straight here, BJ, take your time. But I could hear that he was rowing away on his horse. So with that, anyway, I kicked on. I was lucky I winged the 4th last, 3rd last, 2nd last, and Jesus, I'm like, will the finish line ever come? It's the most longest, loneliest straight that there is, Chepstow. So I jumped the last, and halfway up the running, he began to come back underneath me, you know. I could hear all the crowd were roaring, and I just held on, won it 1.5 lengths, but sure. To win a prestige race, you know, it was fantastic, mind-blowing stuff. The thing about it was, like, I was basically riding for Venetia, and trainers would look at that and just say, look, he's riding for Venetia, and that's that. Now on weekend racing down, there's 4 or 5 meetings on, you know, you pick up quite a lot of outside rides now, but, you know, I was just sort of in that Venetia bracket where people were just saying, well, he just rides for Venetia quite a bit, you know. So Norman was still riding. Norman gave up, was it 2002? I remember Norman calling me the night before he was going to announce he's retired. He said, "It's all yours now," he says to me. And that was basically it, really, you know. So I was 21 when Norman retired, and big boots to fill a bit. I rode 59 winners that the year after Norman retired. I think I came 7th in the championship. Like we had plenty of winners, but we were just missing them Saturday horses. You know, you had the likes of Lady Rebecca had gone, Sam McCann had retired, you know, we'd all them Saturday horses retired, and we're waiting for the next batch to come through. But We had a couple of winners on Saturdays, but we were just missing that good horse. The second ride in the Grand National was a horse called Bramble Hill Duke for Venetia. And Bramble Hill Duke was known well by the rest of the jockeys because they wouldn't track you. And that's going around places like Bangor and Newbury and that. So Bramble Hill Duke was entered up for the Grand National anyway, and he was third reserve. I'll never forget it. Third reserve. The ground dried out. Horses were pulled out, so Bramble Hill Duke gets in, and I'll never forget it. The day before Venetia came in, she says, "We're in, Brian." Bramble Hill Duke is running. I'm like, yay, brilliant. 10 stone, and let's just say, you know, it was a case of survival mode. So I was staying in the hotel the night before with Tony Evans, and I woke up that morning. He was going down to Hereford actually. He had full book down in Hereford. So I said, Jesus, I have 10 stone to do one. Bramble Hill Duke. He says, I don't know why you're trying to do 10 stone in him because you won't be weighing back in, he says to me, right? So I said, all right, fair enough. So I got my instructions. He was keyed up now at this stage. He was well up for it now. And I galloped him down to the first to show it to him. And when I was going down, all the rest of the horse were going back. So I'm going down to the first just to show it to him. And around 10, 15 strides from it, he's backing off it. He's like, fuck, what's this? So I'm there like, going up to it. And he's blowing now. He's like a horse that I'd never seen, you know, something like this before. And I couldn't get him to go near, and then Conor Dwyer came up alongside of me, and his horse walked straight up to the board. He was riding a Kudra, huge horse, huge. My fella was small horse as well. And the Kudra kicks the front board. He said, Brian, he starts laughing. He said, Brian, I won't be tracking you, he says. I said, I don't blame you, Conor, judging by what's happening right now. And I turn around, I gallop back, and of course he's on the bridle again with me, and I'm saying, I said, well, Brian, I'm here now. I'm in it to win. So I went down. I'll never forget, I bounced out on the outside of it, galloping down to the first. And the closer I'm getting to it, the closer he's backing off it. And he's just giving it so much air. He's come down, head-butted the ground, down to the second, and in mid-air, he's giving it so much height in mid-air. His arse end is literally vertical with his head. And he's come down, boom, fell. And yeah, so that was Bramble Hill Duke's experience around entry fences, which didn't go so well. So I suppose Tony Evans was right. I got to the 25th one day. I rode for Michael Scudamore, and the horse went lame on me. What won it that year? I think it was Hedge Hunter won it that year, was it? I've been very lucky with injuries. Now, I'm riding ponies since I was 7, and all I broke was 3 vertebrae in my neck. You know, that happened in Ludlow in 2003. Yeah, stepped clean into the second last, the hurdle at Ludlow, and I plummeted into the ground, and I remember hearing dead bones cracking the neck. But I wasn't knocked out, I was conscious. And I'll never forget it, the ambulance people came over and said, where are you hurting? And I just pointed at my neck. And they were tremendous now. They were very good. And, you know, I was lucky it was up high. If it was down lower, it could be a lot worse now. You know, so I was out with that then for 11 months. Came back then. Sam Thomas was Venetia's #1 then, and Alan O'Keefe was there, Paul O'Neill was there, Yeah, so there was plenty of people ahead of me, and I couldn't see anything, dissolving with them lot. So I decided to move. I spoke a good bit there to people in racing, and I decided to go freelancing, and I based myself out of Lambourne, and I got a lot of outside rides now. I rode a lot for Henry at a night, and Alex Hales was very good to me. Richard Rowe was very good to me. And Emil Lavelle, another trainer, they were good. There was plenty of people that supported me, So, yeah, I tipped away. I done all right, But I find it very important to have a base. If you was even a small trainer there with 15 or 20 rides or horses, and you're going to ride them, that is a breath of fresh air, because then you can circle around him, but when the horse is entered up that you'll be riding it, and that's the track that you're going to win. Like freelancing, it's not for the faint-hearted now. You put in double the amount of miles, and freelancing ain't very easy now. Dave Roberts was the main man. He had a lot of young lads as well, and he worked hard for me now, to be fair. Dave did. I realised that things weren't happening for me. I probably jumped to conclusions a little bit, and I probably didn't give it enough time, but I was sickened. I just felt I had enough of it, And, I thought probably the best route was just to retire and get a job and, just go from there. And I came back home, and I was in a couple of other yards there. I was with Owen Doyle for a while, and I was with Mick Murphy. And Mick Murphy actually, fair play to him, got me a job here in Glenview, Breeding and stallions have always been a huge passion of mine from a very, very young age. Huge passion, and I thought it'd be kind of cool there to go down that route and just take a bit of time away from riding horses. And so I came here to Glenview Stud first, and there was presenting Crocker Rouge, Indian Danehill, Blueprint, and I done a year with that. And it was a huge eye-opener, and I enjoyed it, but I just felt I was a little bit unsettled, I'll be honest with you. And so I took a bit of time out. I done a bit of travelling, and I came back then, and I started riding out then for Paul Cashman here, and I was riding out. I was on a decent wage. And Paul was dual purpose at the time. He had a couple of flat horses, he had a couple of chasers, a couple of pointers. And I remember we went to Thurles one day, and he says to me, what about getting out your licence again? Yeah? He said, look, he says, I've 5 or 6 horses there. He said, you can ride them away there. He says, do 10-10 or above. I said, yeah, okay, yeah. So I started back riding for him quietly away, and 10-10 then became 10-8, 10-7, 10-5. But, I was rightly in it back. I was back in it again, And I remember I was riding a bit for Paul Flynn, who trains up in the Midlands there, and Flinner, yeah. He rang me one day. He says, hey, I'm going over to Bangor next Friday. Will you come over with me? I said, right. Tell me more. He says, I have 4 running. He says, 2 have no chances, and 2 of them do have a chance. So he said, right, we'll go over. So the first fella fell at the second. The second horse fell at the 4th fence. Something in this day ain't going too well. And the one he thought had no chance, Mackay was riding a favourite for Charlie Edgerton. It was like 1-5 on or something. And this filly very little farm. He says, I said, well, what do you want to do here? I don't know. Do what you think. So he says, okay, in Flinner style. And she had experience, so I said, look, pot her way around. So I rode her way 4th or 5th, and she says, I'm travelling away, and she's jumping great. And so the track in Mackay, and I could see Mackay was flicking away at the 3rd last. So you jump the 3rd last, you turn into the straight. Next thing, my mare's just come on the bit, and right in the 2nd last and last, I pick it up and I go on and I win. And she was 100-1 that day. So that was my first winner back. And I never forget it. The jockeys at Bangor that day came out and gave me an applauded me back in. Do you know, that was my first winner in 4 or 5 years. That was special. That was kind of cool. Sure, it was just fantastic. You know, it was gave me the oomph again, you know. So I came back here. I was riding away for Paul, and to be fair, I was thinking of other options in that, and I remember seeing an article one day about American jump racing or something like that, and I was thinking, who's over there now that I could contact and get information about? So there's Calvin McCormick there, who was recently had come back from America. I rode with Calvin in England, and you know, Messenger on Facebook. So I messaged Calvin. I said, Calvin, what's the story with America there? He said, yeah. He said, you should go over, but he said, there's 2 people you should go to. I said, okay, who are they? He said, Jack Fisher or John and Shepherd. He says, look, let me think about it there. He says, I know 1 or 2 people, I'll get back to you. So next thing I know, he came back to me, he says, yeah, give John and Shepherd a call there on such a day at a time. Jesus, I says, this might happen after all. Now, I'd no clue about America now. Obviously huge, and with the racing or nothing, I hadn't really a clue, but I'm thinking, well, if these riders are out there, I could match them with a bit of luck. So I spoke to John and Shepherd, and yeah, he said he'd love to have me. And I remember Ross Garrity was back, and I met him above a Navan one day, and I was telling him I was going out there. Ross had come back from America because things were quiet out there, and he says, this was January time. I says, look, I'm thinking of going out there to America. He said, yeah. He said, go out there in April. I said, a bit late for April. He said, why? I said, I have my flight booked in 5 days' time. He said, Brian, ridiculous going out there. Because there's nothing happening. You know, you're riding out the flat horses and this and that. So that was the time of the real bad snow, do you remember that? And twice I tried to get out of Cork Airport and it wasn't happening. So anyway, I finally get out and I fly into Heathrow over to Philadelphia. So grand. So I land over at Philadelphia. I'm waiting for my luggage. No luggage is coming. Right? My luggage is back in Heathrow. Now all I have now is the bag on my back, basically, to say the least. So I walk outside and it is like they're up to here in snow and it's freezing. So next thing I get a phone call from a number, and it was John Shepherd's head man, Jim Bergen. He said, I'll be with you there in 20 minutes, stand outside such a place. So I stood out there and it was fucking freezing. Cut a long story short, he picks me up, we're going down the road, he's telling me all about this place, and this, you know, could have been, I'd say, a colonel or a captain or something, you know. He was a little bit gentry, you know, and I'm thinking, right, okay. So he takes me to this big shopping store, you know, and this place is This place is as big as is Lidl, and huge place now. And I remember he went down one alleyway and I went over to get some brown bread and cheese for the next morning, and he hands me a lock, right? He said, "Here, partner, you'll be needing that for where you're staying." I said, "Where am I staying? Alcatraz, is it?" He said, "Pretty much." So I'm thinking, Jesus. So we pull up. This is about 11:30 at night time now. And a huge house. And it was split down the middle. There was 5 bedrooms there. There was another 4 on the other side. He said, "Over there, partner, that's where you'll be going." I says, "Okay." And I went there and it was full up. With his staff there riding out all the flat horses and everything. So like, people were in bed and everything, like, and I'm like, "How are you going?" And next thing they say, "Well, we've no bed here for you." So then I have to sleep on the sofa. So alright. That never bothered me before. He says, "I'll see you in the morning, partner, 7 o'clock, they'll take you up." I said, "Jim, I'm not going to bed, or I'm not going to work tomorrow." I said, "There's no way." I said, "Would you mind picking me up tomorrow so I can go in and buy some clothes?" "Right," he says, "right." So he picked me up, took me into TK Maxx, spent serious amount of dough on TK Maxx, and like, I mean, now it was -4 here now. It was Baltic weather, and every time the snow was so heavy, like every half an hour your laneway was full up of snow, and I'm thinking, "Okay, hell, I don't think I made the right move here coming over in the winter time." But then, I cut a long story short, I stuck with it, and spring came and summer came, and booted in a couple of winners, and rest is history, as they say. 80% of the American tracks would be like a pint here, where one Sunday you have it at this place, and the next Sunday then it's at another place. You know, some of the tracks, they were quite challenging as regard tightness, flat. The ground was normally very firm there. Took a long time to get used to the heat, riding in the heat. You know, it was blistering hot. And then, like, you would have carnivals then, like Saratoga, Far Hills, where it'd be 2 or 3 day meeting, and yeah, it was very interesting now. They loved their racing over there, and I just thought that maybe a 7 furlong horse over here would be suited to their tracks over there. You know, a horse that is quick, that's nippy, that is very quick in his feet a bit. Now I'm talking 10 years ago, maybe things have changed more over there now. But, you know, like, but tracks like Far Hills and Fair Hills, they're lovely big galloping tracks. They'd remind you, they'd fit in with a track back here, no problem. So yeah, it was a great experience now. You know, like, John and Shepherd was the Willie Mullins over here. John Shepherd, look, he's English born. He was over in America when he was very young. He trained Storm Cat, you know, who was a very successful sire. He was second in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. He trained Flatheart, who was second in the Champion Hurdle here in the mid-80s, who was actually second in the French Champion Hurdle also. You know, so John Shepherd was a very smart, clever man, you know, and I was lucky I kicked it off quite well with him from the get-go, really. And you know, he knew his horses inside out. Like, he could look at a horse now and in 2 months' time visualize the horse, and he just knew him inside out, you know. I was over there on a 5-year visa, right? And I remember going to Belmont one day, and I was riding away and going down to second last. I took a horrific fall, and again I was knocked out, but I remember I was getting shocks of pain through the fingers like there's no tomorrow. And I went off to the hospital and I damaged a lot of ligaments, and I actually, ruptured, like I kicked it off again with my neck and everything. And I was saying, this got to come to an end now. And that was the second last meeting, and in 3 weeks' time was the last meeting in Camden. And I said it to Dad. I said, Dad, I think I'll finish up at Camden. And it was great there because my brother Paul came over, my uncle came over, Danjo, and Dad came over for it. Now we kept it quiet. I just tip away, and unfortunately I didn't finish on a winner, but I finished in one piece in it, so that was that. And so then I went back to Shepherd's and I was riding out for a couple of weeks and just sorting out what I was doing, and again going back to the stallions, working with stallions and pedigrees. I found myself down in Kentucky working for Windstar. I was down there working with the stallions. I never had any desire to live in America or settle down in America. To be fair, I wanted to come home, and I just sort of let my visa run out, and when I did, then I returned home. So yeah. But like Windstar was a fantastic experience because they had, alongside the Coolmore and the Flat, they had top class stallions down there, Yeah, I came back here and I went up to the Aga Khan. I rode out there that was very seasonal there, where you do a bunch of breaking, and so riding yearlings now wasn't exactly up my street now, but yeah, so Paul Cashman actually advertised looking for a stallion man, and sure, I got my old job back, I suppose. Jockey might be going through a bad time, or things aren't falling right, or he's riding bad horses. When he opens the racing post, he'll see cold jockeys. And he's looking at this and he's thinking now, he's a wife at home, 2 kids, he's a mortgage to pay, and here he is looking at this cold jockeys list. And they're on about mental health. And in my view, that's the last thing you'd want to be looking at. And, I just think that racing's gone so much with stats now, and I think the punter's a lot more of a say in it too. Riders go out there doing their best every day of the week, and they're risking life and limb for the punter and the bookies. And I don't know, I just think that, I'd like to see him work more with him, there's no more saunas now. I couldn't personally ride a 12 stone if there's no sauna, let alone 10 stone. And I don't know, I know they're saying it's all for the better and their health and that, but just what I give back what the jockeys want. I'm just glad I'm not involved riding nowadays, because social media could normally wreck a person. If you're a sensitive guy and you're reading what everyone is saying about you, I couldn't picture being positive anyway, and I just say to the lads out there in the bookies, jockeys are risking their lives for you, and just squeeze you on social media. Don't be putting up death threats, and don't be putting up he's useless. He's a family at home as well. He needs to pay, look after too, and I just don't agree with how much they can write and put up, and the neck of these people who haven't even sat in a horse. for their 5 or double that they've just lost, you know. I suppose closed mouth catches no flies. The best advice I give, I suppose you'll get what you want out of life if you work hard enough at it. Yeah, I think the future looks bright. My wife Ria, she's fairly keen in this breeding industry as well, and you know, this is something that she wouldn't have seen, so she's only recently after, you know, getting into it in the sales, like myself a bit. She worked for Shawnee Tracy when she was younger, and Scobie Fitzgerald there, and no, it's looking good. I as I say, I like quality over quantity, you know, and just keep the circle small, and I'd prefer to be selling 2 for nice prices than 5 for small prices, you know, and just keep progressing really.